person that, I don't know, gave me the inner strength that I needed to overcome, or to be able to think about overcoming the tremendous odds that were against me. Was my grandmother. She came from Wilmington, North Carolina, to see me at Yardville Prison. I was in that prison. I was put in a maximum security unit, in a cell with 2 guards in front of the cell 24 hours a day, and a cell between 2 gun towers that could train their guns directly on the cell. I was told that I was in the Yardville unit for women, even though I was the only woman, and they tried to keep me there for the rest of my life. My grandmother came to visit me there to tell me a dream, and she came with all of my family, and everybody was happy, and I'm like, what's happening with y'all? And they said, no, she had a dream, and I was like, okay. And so my grandmother's dream was that she was dressing me, that she was in an old house that she lived in when she lived in New York still, and she was putting clothes on me. I said, is that the dream? She said, that's the dream. And I said, well, was I little or big? She said, no, you were big. So I said, oh my God, the only time people dress anybody when they're grown is when they're dead. And so she said, no, I know what you're thinking, no. What this dream means is that you are going to leave this prison. I don't know when, but it's going to be much less time than you've already spent here. And, I didn't understand the dream, to be honest. It didn't make any sense to me. What does this have and wearing clothes have to do with getting out of prison? But my grandmother has always had dreams, and her dreams have always come true. I don't know how my mother walked her from.
Good everything. Wow. Hi.
Good everything.
Thank you. I'd seen that clip before.
Yeah, is that the one? That's another one, right? That's not the one I sent you.
That is absolutely.
Is it? Oh my goodness. That's very interesting how that works. That's
Mm.
her talking about the
Oh,
escape.
wow. Listen, I have no control over these things. I literally cut and pasted and put that in the thing and snatched it. And that's what came out. I'm getting chills right now because we were having a little off mic conversation, so I apologize for our tardiness. But I was thinking about how spiritual the awakening, like if you're not awakened, if you're still like, you don't know, and everything feels like this is weird or this is woo-woo and I don't get it. That's why I'm real confident that the victory. And then I saw your title this morning and I said,
our title, that's Assata's title.
No, that it is our duty to win. But I'm very confident that the victory is already here because of what she just, and this is not even what you wanted us to play today. And I can't even.
No. It's what she wanted. It's what she and her grandmother wanted us to play.
Baby, listen.
Yeah.
So
that's exactly what that was.
It's ancestors. It's a knowing.
Absolutely.
It's confidence. And you think about we're setting, and I'm going to call the name that her grandmother might have known her by, Joanne Deborah Byron. Not the name that they had on the walls of the post office.
That's right. Or even the name of the man she met when they were in school at BMCC in Manhattan that she got married to for 3 years. Right. They know about Chestermart, but that wasn't the name she came out of her mama's womb.
And she annulled that marriage, right? She She got that
That's
married.
right.
So that's not the name that she would have been known by. Assata Olugbala Shakur.
Yes.
Olugbala Shakur. May
She,
transition.
she who struggles, one who saves.
Wow.
Kiswahili and Yoruba. Assata Olugbala. Yeah. May transition when?
This week. September 25th, her daughter put something out on social media, which made it because I was like, when I heard it, I was like, okay. At the same time, I had joy that she made transition free, because they've been trying for a very long time to reincarcerate her, to snatch her back. The governor of my state, Chrissy Todd Whitman, had a whole campaign. There was another iteration during the first Trump administration to bring her back, and
Barack and Michelle
Barack
Obama, they
Obama.
went to Cuba. They asked Raul Castro, where's Assata? Man, you go to hell. Chocolate Wonder. Nah, sorry, baby. None of
Not
y'all. Shout out to all of y'all trying to catch her. Now,
not
what?
the only one. Not the only one. According to
No,
some
no, no.
other
All of them. That's standard
some other
policy for a president. Yeah.
some other Black people also participated in
Mhm.
trying to find her.
No question. We can name the names. If you Negroes, how y'all feel today? Y'all still slaves. Anyway, your master doing your master's bidding. Hmm?
You
I
know
ain't
what?
mad at him.
You know what else is ironic? The Black Liberation Army that was so widely demonized in the Gestapo-like tactics of the state troopers in New Jersey. Everyone knew, which is why the Black Panthers held guns in Oakland and other places, and to kind of protect the community from the people who are coming and brutalizing. There's no rule of law when the law is the one breaking the law. If there's a law to be, you know what I'm saying? So like, we're heading back there, or maybe we never left. But
Never left.
I just wonder, because there's no Assata Shakur. At least I don't see any on the horizon, or even Afeni, or I don't know, Dr. Carr. Tell me when you first ran into Assata Shakur.
Probably like a lot of us. I was an adult. I think it was around 19. I hadn't thought about that. That's a great question. Probably around 1989. So I was good and grown. So
Good and
I
grown.
was about 24, 23, 24. Yeah. And it might have been buying her book in Columbus, Ohio, the African Center for Study and Worship. They had a bookstore. Or it could have been the summer I spent in Manhattan working for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, when Shirley Eiffel was a young attorney on staff there. That was the summer of '89, buying books from, you know what? I can see it. Yeah. 120, not 125th, Malcolm X, and 128th, or was it 132nd, where Mama Una Malzat, Liberation Bookstore.
I've been
Yeah,
there.
that's yeah, absolutely. That's where it was. And I'm grateful for that. I mean, that's obviously been most of my life ago. But how about you?
I remember going to the post office with my mom, and I was little. I had to be little because she was holding my hand, and I remember looking up and seeing the picture, the grainy black and white picture with the little afro and those eyes, and it was at the top of the page, most wanted. And I remember being scared of that lady. I remember being scared of that lady. And I don't know what the distance was. I know I know I asked about it, but the book Assata ended up on my kitchen counter at some point. As
Wow.
a teenager. So it was in my house. I know I was a teenager, and my dad, I'm sure it was him that bought the book, or maybe it was my mom. But yeah, so I read it as a teenager, the book Assata, and it was probably one of the first times when I realized perspective is everything, because that lady was, as you talk about the framing, the framework questions, that lady was who she is to them, but Assata the book is who she is to herself and to us, and it was
That's
important
right.
that I had that perspective, because I wouldn't have known anything but that's the most wanted, most feared, the scariest. That she's talking about they're training guns. This is a little tiny. She's not that big a woman. She's
Nope.
unarmed inside of a cell, and you got guard towers with guns pointed at her. Like, what is she going to do? You know, you have already neutralized the threat. If there was a threat, if there was ever a threat, or maybe the threat is in her very boldness of standing upright and demanding her humanity, demanding it, right? That's the threat. That's really the threat, isn't it?
Yeah, that's really the threat. So they couldn't neutralize the threat without
Correct.
they had to kill her
Correct.
or catch her and kill her slow,
Correct.
like they did with her comrade Mutulu Shakur. You keep them in jail their whole life and then let them out 5 minutes before they make their last breath. Her comrade, of course, who was with her that day, still walks the earth. He's not in the best of health, but they kept him way past, stacked the extra 20 on his life, taking his life. And so, you know, of course, Zaid Malik Shakur died at the scene in 1973. But when you think about the fact that she got out, it's like, we want her. So, and when you read her autobiography, as you say, you see page after page of, I'm not going to do that. The white woman, when they had her in the workhouse, you will call me by my last name. I'll call you by your first name. No, I don't know you and I don't respect you. I'll call you by your first name. If you call me by my first name, I'll call you by your last name. You call me by my last name. I'm not calling you by, I call everybody by all y'all by your first name. No problem. Then I'll call you Miss B Word. Whoa, wait, what? They wouldn't let her talk with, I mean, she said everything she did. She said, I learned to barricade the doors in a prison cell. And I would stack the metal cups up so they couldn't come busting up in there in the middle, because so many people are said they hang themselves and they couldn't. Nah, if you come in this door, everybody gonna know you coming in. I don't care what time. I mean, to the little thing. So if they didn't kill her, they didn't win. You know what I'm saying? And she won. She won every day of her life for the last 50 years, and then went on to the ancestors. As Jackie Robinson said, as Jesse Jackson said at Jack Robinson's funeral, Jackie stole home. He's now where referees are not allowed. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, can you get freer than that, Prof? In this moment, in this day and age, in this moment?
I love that framing, because for many of us, there's a lot of anxiety. What's going to happen? Well, all the things that are going to happen,
That's right.
But you can't control this vessel that you're in, the spirit that's in this vessel, and make some determinations about what that's going to look like. You have an option.
That's right. You have an option. And even when you are behind bars, I love one of the other things she says in her autobiography, in her memoir, when she says, there's incarceration in prison, and then there's incarceration in the larger society. It's just that they aren't surveilling and policing us as consistently and as directly outside of prison, but we all in prison. And so
I think that might change. That might have changed. I think we are as heavily surveilled now. Mm-hmm. I think inside and out.
No, that's true. You make a very important point there when she talks about even how they fed them that slop, and the women got together and protested, and the prisoners protested, and the diet changed for a little while, a few days, and it went back to the slop. He said, I can't eat that. So she said, I survived on the nuts and the berries and stuff that my family would bring to me, and stuff I could put on the commissary, but I couldn't eat that mess. And then, of course, we who are walking around with freedom, we go right in and say, give me some of that poison. I need some of that sweet tasting poison. So in some ways, like you say, who's worse off? Well, I'm free. Are you free? You're ingesting the thing that's killing you. So yeah, you're right. That's a very profound observation. What does it mean to be under assault? Especially when they don't even need the physical guard. Now we do it to ourselves. I'm not reading that. I ain't got to understand that. Well, I got to study all this. What time's the game on? I was listening to you yesterday. I was listening to y'all yesterday, and you were talking about the new film, Him. and how it just not even reminded you, just renewed your determination. Said, look at what they're doing. I thought that was a very penetrating way you described this complex that people are going to worship today and tomorrow. It's just like, so yeah, I guess so. We are in jail. We in prison. Wow. Mm, mm,
Yeah,
mm.
yeah. But
Yeah,
we got the key. And I thank you every
we do.
Saturday,
We do.
290 consecutive. I can't think enough about the specialness of the space. There was a few calls this week that really penetrated my soul. There was a gentleman who called from hospice care.
Mm, mm.
Just that, just that. I just had to sit back and I could well up just thinking about somebody who needed to call the show to let us know the impact. And he said he didn't read his first book until he was in his 70s. And I think about some days, let me just say, this year has been tough. There's been times when I had contemplated not doing this anymore.
Mm,
And
mm,
just seriously, like,
mm.
why am I doing this? There was this kind of like, folk ain't even show up for themselves. Like, every day, you get called an op and all these other, it's like y'all ain't even appreciative, what I'm saying, of the sacrifice. It's like crazy to me. And so I'm like, I'm good. And there was points where I was like, I just go to some island somewhere and just chill and drink coconut water and be happy, read all of the books I haven't read and feel, get my walks on, swim in the ocean and wait for the whole thing to finish. And, so I had to take some moments and I had some rejuvenation in Galveston. So I thank you for that, for showing up,
Oh, thank
being
you for
around
putting that
people,
together. Oh, oh,
you know,
for
but then,
convening us. Yes.
and then you get a call like that from a man calling from hospice, thanking us for what we do every day. And then you go, okay, lady from Oregon yesterday, calling up, and people of a certain age who, didn't have a community to be a part of, people thanking us, all of the authors that come on, every place they go, there's a Nubian showing up, and that means something. And a Nubian didn't exist 5 years ago in the
No.
sense with a K in front of it to be a part of something. And then you realize what we do every Saturday, well, because you're out in them streets. I don't be out in them streets like that, but you know,
You can be
you,
everywhere at once. That's the
yeah,
biggest
and
truth.
I feel good about that. But then you look up and I think about Assata Shakur, who spent her entire adult life on the quote unquote run, but absolutely embraced by a culture that wasn't necessarily hers, but was absolutely hers because we are everywhere. We were already here everywhere, and we belong everywhere we are. And for her to close her eyes with the comfort of knowing that they can't win, they will never win. And
Never.
so the only way they win is when we give up. So we have to be
That's
here.
exactly right. We have to be here. Yeah, that's a man, talk about a powerful lesson. Yeah, everywhere we are, we see each other, and this space, this platform, this convened space is revealing us to ourselves. And so it's very powerful. For a moment there, his name passed through my head, and Sundiata Acoli, who is still on top of the earth, who they gave so many decades in captivity, who was paroled and finally released in 2022, who still walks the earth. But the beauty is that wherever you find yourself, think of Russell Maroon Shoatz, who made transition recently, and his family. We were at Sankofa all together, his children, talking about his captivity, and was rereading the conversation that my man Kofi Taharka, the leader of the National Black United Front, had the first time he was able to physically visit with Baba Sundiata. And, you know, people who are incarcerated, who, depending on the level of incarceration and the level of depravity of the captors and the level to which the folk who are been captured have been deprived, depends. The science and technology can reach behind the prison walls. Some of you are listening now. or will listen subsequently on the podcast or through other devices and means. And we are here as just a group of people in a much, much larger army, thinking about women in particular. I was listening to Women in Resistance, Brother Adesoji, and of course, Sister Aya, grappling with Julia de Burgos, the great Latino poetess and struggler. We had a freedom school for many years in North Philly at Julia de Burgos School. And week after week, she's doing these women of African descent. Andre Bloin, I think about her in particular, who faced incredible odds in some kind of way, still figured out how to be in the world in ways that remind us that, as Sly and the Family Stone once sang, don't you know that you are free? At least in your mind, if you choose to be. Gotta stand. And, as we think about this week, 7 short days between the last time we were together live like we are now, and how on Thursday afternoon in Cuba, Assata Olugbala Shakur made transition. Thought that we might continue in our conversation. It's very interesting how the ancestors picked that, because I was watching, and there's several documentaries, and you see her there sitting and talking and walking. Haile Garima, Shrikiana Garima, and their crew has the last footage that was shot with her while she was incarcerated before she escaped. And, I hear how they talk about this all the time. And then, of course, we see a lot of documentaries, a lot of early footage of her in Cuba. And there's an incredible documentary called Eyes of the Rainbow by an African filmmaker who was born and raised in Cuba, an Afro-Cuban filmmaker, a sister named Gloria Rolando Casamayo. She's worked for many years with the Cuban National Film Institute, and she did a documentary almost 30 years ago called Eyes of the Rainbow. And you hear Assata Shakur talking about how when she got to Cuba, the Africa in her just opened up. It's really quite powerful, and how she has moved that work. But what we saw today, what we opened our conversation with her talking about her grandmother, that's the ultimate destination. So powerful, like you said, Prof. Man, that's so powerful, because that's them. Probably the less recent ancestor, probably her grandmother, because Assata has just begun her journey, her first steps into ancestorhood. So we continue to ring that bell and light a candle and speak her name and pray her over and comfort her daughter and her comrades, and remind ourselves that the steps into ancestorhood as we go to meet our ancestors, and we're all moving in that direction, require us to send all best energies as she takes those baby steps. But then again, it is Assata Shakur, so maybe it was her too. But that was the perfect framing, because ultimately, when she said, my grandmother's dreams are always accurate, what strength does that give you? What strength does that give you? And shout out to all the folks in the contemporary oppressive social structure who think somehow that propping up their silly attempts to restrict our humanity. Think about the runt rooster at the Pentagon, Pete Hegseth, who announced that 20 killers who were given the Medal of Honor for the slaughter they helped conduct in 1890 at Wounded Knee would keep their medals of honor. Hey, man, give out those medals of honor. It's beautiful. I embrace it, because those medals of honor are exactly what you think they are, my friend. So,
I was able to pull up the whole
oh, you
video.
found? No,
Yeah.
no. The one
Can we,
you played is the one had to be played. Yeah, we
okay.
could play it at the end. Let's play it at the
Okay.
end.
Okay. And I did want to ask you what this Wounded Knee thing. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
What are they doing? I was so confused by
No, you weren't. You
what is
weren't. I love it how you do
happening.
that. You know what it is. Their world was never was never together, and now it is falling apart in public view. So they don't have a choice but to act out of desperation. So I encourage it. I want more of that, because what it does is it takes away all the hiding places. It strips us of our illusions. I want them to do it all. You know, I read a report this week that they want to put Charles James Kirk on the money. Please do that. Do it all. Because once you've done it, you can't go back. You see, it can't be redeemed. It couldn't be redeemed anyway, but the illusion that it could be redeemed is being stripped away. This is why, all these years we've known each other and all these years we're in conversation, you say, well, why are you so enthusiastic? I'm enthusiastic because I know where it's got to go. This is what happens in desperation. So, yeah, keep those medals. That honor is exactly what you think it is, my friend. And we don't give a damn. So I thought what we could do as we continue in this conversation today, and that it is our duty to win. The kind of theme we're talking from today and being in community with today is taken from Assata Shakur's autobiography. It is the phrase, one of the phrases, it is our duty to fight for our freedom, it is our duty to win, that we've heard on the lips of our next generations, that has intensified over the last few years. Even as Assata continued to organize, you hear her in Commons lyrics, you hear it in Public Enemy, Hard, My Calling Card, supporter of Chesimard. And that was actually, that might have been, don't believe the hype, that might have been 1987, 1988. And maybe when I first said, who is Chesimard? Now I got to go look up Joanne Chesimard. Oh, Assata Shakur. Okay, now that kind of pop culture has been there. But, in the wake of the murders of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and Big George Floyd, when we heard people in the streets and when we joined with the folk who are marching and protesting and organizing, saying it is our duty to fight for our freedom, it is our duty to win, that's taken directly from chapter 3 of Assata Shakur's autobiography. So I thought it would maybe good to raise the words of Assata Olugbala Shakur this morning. So why don't we, continuing this for a few minutes, I want to read directly from her autobiography. This is from chapter 3. And of course, folks have read the autobiography. If you haven't, I encourage you to go out and get it. And if you there's some companion pieces that are also very important. Her auntie was also her lawyer for a moment there, Evelyn Williams, and she has written a book about the lack of evidence. They tried her a dozen times. You read Lennox Hines' introduction, the newer edition, I think came out in 2001 or so, has Angela Davis and Lennox Hines. Lennox Hines was an attorney. He went through the whole trial record. If folk want to go into that, it is, as you say, Prof, who she is to other people. But the autobiography she's writing for herself is grappling with who she becomes, who she always was, and who she becomes. So let's look at this. If you have the autobiography, you can go to page 49. And of course, I'm traveling, so I just pulled an electronic version, but I'm going to read her words and we can hear her words. She says, I spent my first month at the Middlesex County Workhouse writing. This is after they've captured her. They say they charged her with everything under the sun. You read Lennox Hines' introduction a dozen times. Every time it was an acquittal or hung jury, or they dismissed the charge. And finally, they say that she participated in, that she killed this state trooper, which she did not do, as her aunt and lawyer writes extent in her work, because her aunt also defended a number of other people, Black Liberation Army folks and others. This is during the teeth of COINTELPRO, the counterintelligence program, and there's no evidence at all. Her arm was, for all intents and purposes, useless. She couldn't lift it. There's no gun powder on her, no gun residue on her hands. They were in the hospital trying. No. This all-white jury convicted her. This is after one of the jurors in the first attempt to see the jury, this young guy was like, they in the jury room talking about they got to go back to work. And she black, she guilty. And that forced the venue change, but they changed the venue to a place where they could get even a whiter jury pool. I mean, so yeah, it was trumped up charge, but we know how that feels now. Anyway, this is what she says. She says, I spent my first month at the Middlesex County Workhouse writing. Evelyn, that's her lawyer and I, had brought some newspaper clippings, and it was obvious the press was trying to railroad me, to make me seem like a monster. According to them, I was a common criminal, just going around shooting down cops for the hell of it. I had to make a statement. I had to talk to my people, governance. As you say, we see our African studies framework there. I had to talk to my people and let them know what I was about, where I was really coming from. The statement seemed to take forever to write. I wanted to make a tape of it, science and technology category, y'all, and enlisted Evelyn's help. As my lawyer, she was dead set against it. Evelyn thinking in a social structure framing, which is the accurate thing to do. Your lawyer didn't want you doing that. But we go on. She said, and advised me not to make the tape. But as a Black woman living in America, and by the way, when you read the autobiography, you know that she replaces the C's with the K at this point during the Black Power movement, and still echoing today the idea that that C is not found in many African languages in the rendering that we have, the consonant rendering we have. So you often see things spelled with a K. She says, but as the Black woman living in America, Amerika, Evelyn understood why it was important and necessary. When the prosecutor found out about the tape, he tried to get her thrown off the case. She was ordered by the court never to bring a tape recorder again when she visited me. Oh, but that one got through. And your children have it in their mouths when they're marching in the streets to this day. She says, I made the tape of, quote, to my people, end quote, on July 4th, 1973. And it was broadcast on many radio stations. This is important as we think about Sinclair. We think about these monster conglomerates trying to suck up everything. We see that nasty piece of work, Brendan Carr at the Federal Communications Commission, saying that he doesn't like the idea that companies can't come up and buy more than one station in a market. Maybe they can buy 2, 3, 4, 15, buy them all. But guess what? That ain't going to help you, my friend. Even as you read chapter 28 of Project 2025 and understand that Brendan Carr and them want to really rule broadband and rule the digital seas and navigate your way out of being able for us to do what we're doing right now. But guess what? We live in a world, B. We live in a world, Brand. We live in a world, Brandon Carr. And that world is much bigger than your nasty white nativist imagination, as we were seeing in the United Nations this week. I'll come back to that. So she says, I made the tape to my people on July 4th, isn't that poignant, 1973, and it was broadcast on many radio stations. Here is what I said. Here it is. Black brothers, Black sisters, I want you to know that I love you. And I hope that somewhere in your hearts, you have love for me. My name is Assata Shakur, slave name Joanne Chasamar, and I am a revolutionary, a Black revolutionary. By that, I mean I have declared war on all forces that have raped our women, castrated our men, and kept our babies empty-bellied. I have declared war on the rich who prosper on our poverty, the politicians who lie to us with smiling faces, and all the mindless, heartless robots who protect them and their property. I am a Black revolutionary, and as such, I am a victim of all the wrath, hatred, and slander that America is capable of. Like all other Black revolutionaries, America is trying to lynch me. I am a Black revolutionary woman. And because of this, I have been charged with and accused of every alleged crime in which a woman was believed to have participated. The alleged crimes in which only men were supposedly involved, I have been accused of planning. They have plastered pictures alleged to be me, and it's been proven that it wasn't her. She says, that's not me. But still, that little picture that you saw, Prof, when you were a little girl, yeah, she says, that's not me. She says, they have plastered pictures alleged to be me in post offices, airports, hotels, police cars, subways, banks, televisions, and newspapers. They have offered over $50,000 in rewards for my capture, and they have issued orders to shoot on sight and shoot to kill. And let's be very clear about that. That bounty went up to over $2 million. And when Big Boy, governor of New Jersey, and the governor of Pennsylvania next door, Tom Ridge and all them boys, and the federal government was saying they wanted her, she in 2013 was on the FBI's most wanted terrorist list. Remember that, Chris Christie? Well, you ain't got to worry about seeing Assata no more, because wherever you going when you make transition ain't going to be where she is right now. She goes on and says, I am a Black revolutionary, and by definition, that makes me a part of the Black Liberation Army. The pigs have used their newspapers and TV to paint the Black Liberation Army as vicious, brutal, mad dog criminals. They have called us gangsters and gun malls and have compared us to such characters as John Dillinger and Ma Barker. It should be clear, it must be clear, to anyone who can think, see, or hear that we are the victims and not the criminals. Sound familiar, you all? Heather Cox Richardson was saying last week that in the current fascist atmosphere, an attempt to project strength, which is, of course, a desperate attempt to forestall the weakness that is emerging. The white nationalists and nativists who have captured the federal apparatus temporarily in the United States government. Anybody who doesn't agree with them is a Democrat. So I know people want to think about political parties, Democrats, Republicans. You need to cast that aside, or at least suspend it temporarily. So when you hear somebody say the radical left, the Democrats, that means you. That's the labeling. Understand, there is no sheltered rear. I ain't no Democrat. No, you're not a political Democrat. You're not registered for the Democratic Party. Yeah, but that is a label that they think will be more effective than saying CRT or radical communists. Yeah, no, Democrat. That's what they're using. She goes on and says they call us murderers. But we did not murder over 250 unarmed Black men, women, and children, or wound thousands of others in the riots they provoked during the 60s. The rulers of this country have always considered their property more important than our lives. They call us murderers, but we were not responsible for the 28 brother inmates and 9 hostages murdered at Attica. They call us murderers, but we did not murder or wound over 30 unarmed Black students at Jackson State or Southern either. They call us murderers, but we did not murder Martin Luther King, Emmett Till, Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, George Jackson, Nat Turner, James Chaney, and countless others. We did not murder by shooting in the back 16-year-old Rita Lloyd, 11-year-old Ricky Bodden, or 10-year-old Clifford Glover. They call us murderers, but we do not control or enforce a system of racism and oppression that systematically murders Black and third world people. I was listening to the good sister Joy Degree, who's a visiting professor down here at Morehouse. Shout out to Morehouse College. I'll have more to say about that in a minute. That's why I'm rocking my Augusta Institute hoodie. Augusta Institute, of course, is the founding of Morehouse College by Black people in the church in Augusta, Georgia, before they moved to Atlanta. But Joy Degree was she had a workshop. I saw it online where there was a recording of it where she was talking with kind of interracial blend of folk. And she said, name the ways that the racism of white people and white racism impacts the daily lives of all Black people. When people start talking about education and economics and can you get a loan and your health care, she says, okay, now we got some of those. We can continue that list, but let's stop there. Now, name the ways in which Black racism impact the lives of all white people. And as the silence persisted, she said, you see, I could say, I hate all white people, but you still gonna get that loan. I hate all white people, you still gonna get that advantage. In other words, stop talking about the idea of prejudice as something that can impact my life when it isn't attached to a system. So it's very interesting. Anyway, so she says, aside of that is, she says, but we do not control or enforce a system of racism and oppression that systematically murders Black and third world people. Although Black people supposedly comprise about 15% of the total American population, at least 60% of murder victims are Black. For every pig that is killed in the so-called line of duty, there are at least 50 Black people murdered by the police. Black life expectancy is much lower than white, and they do their best to kill us before we are even born. We are burned alive in fire-trapped tenements. Our brothers and sisters OD daily from heroin and methadone. Our babies die from lead poisoning. Millions of Black people have died as a result of indecent medical care. This is murder. But they have got the gall to call us murderers. They call us kidnappers, she writes. Yet Brother Clark Squire, who is accused along with me of murdering a New Jersey state trooper, Sundiata Kohli, was kidnapped on April the 2nd, 1969 from our Black community and held on $1 million ransom in the New York Panther 21 conspiracy case. He was acquitted on May 13th, 1971, along with all the others of 156 counts of conspiracy by a jury that took less than 2 hours to deliberate. And she talks about that. She writes about that in the book, how she's in there and she's listening, waiting for the verdict to come back. And she says, oh man, I know what's going to happen. And her lawyer like, yeah, they're going to quit y'all. What you mean? He said, did you see the faces of the jurors? Did you see especially those black faces? And Assata writes, yeah, I did look in their faces, and those black people were looking to us. This is why it's important to answer your call for jury duty, friends. I know we revolutionaries and damn that, and I ain't voting and I ain't going to serve on no jury. Yeah, read Assata's autobiography. If you've read Malcolm X's autobiography, you have to read Assata Shakur's autobiography. In fact, you should read Assata Shakur's biography before you read Malcolm X's. If you got to pick between the two in the spirit of this new ancestor, let that energy suffuse you. But she said, I don't know what's going to happen. This is the Panther 21 we're talking about now. She says, he was acquitted on May 13th, 1971, along with all the others of 156 counts of conspiracy by a jury that took less than 2 hours to deliberate. But the squire was innocent, yet he was kidnapped from his community and family. Over 2 years of his life was stolen, but they call us kidnappers. Think about that in the terms of, Bozo and his friends trying to end cashless bail, which they can't by law. Think of that when you start talking about kidnapping people and rendering them and pulling them out the country and sticking them somewhere else like they did with those 14 Africans they took to Ghana, most of whom have now been returned to their countries of origin. Think about that. To people who are languishing away in these various places where they've disappeared. That think about that when you think about the hundreds of thousands to millions who are now behind bars, who between the time they were arrested and the time they got a trial, which was insufficient anyway, all those stretches of time where they weren't even brought before a judge, habeas corpus, kidnapping, as she says, we did not kidnap the thousands of brothers and sisters held captive in America's concentration camps. 90% of the prison population in this country are Black and third world people who can afford neither bail nor lawyers. She goes on and says, they call us thieves and bandits. They say we steal. But it was not we who stole millions of Black people from the continent of Africa. We were robbed of our language, of our gods, of our culture, of our human dignity, of our labor, and of our lives. They call us thieves. Yet it is not we who rip off billions of dollars every year through tax evasions, illegal price fixing, embezzlement, consumer fraud, bribes, kickbacks, and swindles. They call us bandits. Yet every time most Black people pick up our paychecks, we are being robbed. Every time we walk into a store in our neighborhood, we are being held up. And every time we pay our rent, the landlord sticks a gun in our ribs. This woman is writing from prison and speaking this into a tape recorder. And here we are in September 2025, or whenever folks are listening to her words and being inspired to go read for themselves the rest of the book, being reminded of movement and memory. How did or do we remember this moment? I'll tell you about my encounter with James Comey, who's now saying, I want a trial. Okay, we put you on trial at Howard University, sir, when you were there back in September 2019. I'll get to that in a minute. He goes on and says, they call us thieves. But we did not rob and murder millions of Indians by ripping off their homeland, then call ourselves pioneers. They call us bandits. But it's not we who are robbing Africa, Asia, and Latin America of their natural resources and freedom while the people who live there are sick and starving. If y'all heard the United Nations speeches during this week, the general debate sessions, which aren't debates, but each country gets to speak. And if you caught the African countries, there's a distance between what's going on in many of these African countries and what their leaders and what their representatives were saying at the UN this week. And while John Mahama, the president of Ghana, for example, gave an incredibly powerful speech this week at the United Nations, I encourage folk to go back and look at that. There's still the problem that you took these Africans from the United States that is waging war against our people. And of course, the defense of the Ghanaian government is that, well, we wanted to do that because we believe in protecting all our African family. And so it's better for them to be here and then we'll handle it from here. But the Ghanaian parliament was like, yeah, you didn't check with us and that's illegal what you did. And so there's a battle. And then the captives, those who were trafficked back to the continent of Africa, had lawyers who said, no, they're going to return us to our countries of origin. And that's going to be a problem. I talked about that on the radio yesterday on Sirius. But Mahama gave a hell of a speech. William Ruto from Kenya gave a pretty good speech and some interesting speeches. Gabon, it was very interesting to hear the speeches that went on. Of course, Mia Moore Motley did what she does. But what Assata is saying here is that you're robbing Africa, Asia, and Latin America of their natural resources. And you saw speech after speech after speech at the UN today saying that very thing. The president of Colombia, who they then revoked his visa and put him out the country because he had the temerity to speak at a rally after he had finished at the UN, condemning Donald Trump. Little Marco, whose people are from the same Cuba that protected Assata Shakur until she transitioned and became an ancestor. Sorry, little man. Sorry, little Marco. You couldn't catch her. Now she's beyond your capacity to even disturb physically. You better hope when you make your transition, you don't run into her on the other side, but I guess there's probably little chance of that. She goes on and says, the rulers of this country and their flunkies have committed some of the most brutal, vicious crimes in history. They are the bandits. They are the murderers, and they should be treated as such. These maniacs are not fit to judge me, Clark, or any other Black person on trial in America. Black people should and inevitably must determine our destinies. Every revolution in history, she writes, has been accomplished by actions, although words are necessary. Very important. Actions, but words, which are also actions, are necessary. These are not two opposite things. It's not either or, it's both, and they are symbiotic. That's why we're doing what we're doing week after week, day after day, month after month, year after year. We have to join in that steady work. She says we must create shields that protect us and spears that penetrate our enemies. Black people must learn how to struggle by struggling. We must learn by our mistakes. She says, I want to apologize to you, my Black brothers and sisters, for being on the New Jersey Turnpike. Sorry. She said, I should have known better. This is what she writes. I should have known better. The turnpike is a checkpoint where Black people are stopped, searched, harassed, and assaulted. Revolutionaries must never be in too much of a hurry or make careless decisions. He who runs when the sun is sleeping will stumble many times. Ask Araminta Ross, Harriet Tubman. Indeed. Almost done. She says, every time a Black freedom fighter is murdered or captured, the pigs try to create the impression that they have quashed the movement, destroyed our forces, and put down the Black revolution. Sound familiar? Take Black out of it and put Democrats, radical left immediately. Every time a Black freedom fighter is murdered or captured, the pigs try to create the impression that they have quashed the movement, destroyed our forces, put down the Black revolution. The pigs also try to give the impression that 5 or 10 guerrillas are responsible for every revolutionary action carried out in America. That is nonsense. She writes, that is absurd. Black revolutionaries do not drop from the moon. We are created by our conditions, shaped by our oppression. We are being manufactured in droves in the ghetto streets, places like Attica, San Quentin, Bedford Hills, Leavenworth, and Sing Sing. They are turning out thousands of us. Many jobless Black veterans and welfare mothers are joining our ranks. Brothers and sisters from all walks of life who are tired of suffering passively make up the BLA. There is, finally, and will always be, she writes, until every Black man, woman, and child is free, a Black Liberation Army. The main function of the Black Liberation Army at this time is to create good examples, to struggle for Black freedom and to prepare for the future. We must defend ourselves and let no one disrespect us. We must gain our liberation by any means necessary. She writes, it is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains. How many times have you heard just that last 4 lines? How many times have you heard that in the streets in the last 6 years? How many times have you heard that at meetings, beginning or end meetings, or have a young person stand up, or have a 6-year-old or a 16-year-old or a 26-year-old or a 96-year-old? It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains. That's where the chant comes from. That is from Assata Shakur's autobiography, page 52. And then she dedicates that recording to the spirit of Ronald Carter, William Christmas, Mark Clark, Mark Essex, Frank Hetty Fields, Woody Changa, Olugbala Green, Fred Hampton, Lil Bobby Hutton, George Jackson, Jonathan Jackson, James McClain, Harold Russell, Zaid Malik Shakur, Anthony Kumu, Olugbala White. And she ends, we must fight on. So that's what we're talking about when we start talking about who Assata Shakur is. It's a very important moment for us to just take that moment and think about that. And she has made transition. And when she's contrasting that long history of criminal assaults against African people, and really not only African people, but everybody, who just mind their business trying to live in the world. A lot of things happened at the United Nations this week. Bibi Netanyahu got up on Friday morning to speak. They put him first, and as the reports I was reading and the speculation as to why Netanyahu went first on Friday, uh, as almost everybody walked out of the chamber and he spoke to a virtually empty chamber, um, was that they wanted him first because if he had gone later in the day, there would have been more delegates there to walk out. And of course, he was very defiant in what he said, but the whole point is, when you're slaughtering people, oh, go listen to the speeches that were given at the United Nations this week. You have no place to run and no place to hide, and no defense is strong enough. But this long history of criminal assaults against humanity in the contemporary social structure, she's contrasting it there with African resistance grounded in self-determination, governance spaces, who we are to each other. Very important. This week, we're reflecting on these ongoing assaults right now on our common humanity by U.S. state actors and the growing resistance to white nationalism. We saw it with Jimmy Kimmel, for example, and state fascism. We're seeing it everywhere, which is revealing the reality that people are working so hard to try to obscure by projecting this sense of strength and inevitability. But the vital role of study in this, words are necessary. Study is necessary. Memory and collective action. We got to have that. It will help us control, confront, neutralize, and ultimately overcome these forces who are trying to project strength because they are weak. And so, this week, as you say, Prof, I've been out here in these streets navigating with that K, which represents knowledge, and running into a lot of folks who are in Nubia. Those of you who are in here this morning or will be watching this later or joining later in office hours on Monday, who have run into the streets in the various places I've been up to, and including much around the Atlanta area and in Atlanta itself. Grateful to see you all. Always good to see everyone. Looking at the obituaries, and as you and Larry, Prof, I think we were just wrapping up on the air, and the news began to filter through. At least that's the first time I saw it. And then you said, can we verify this? Can we check it? Or we say something, and of course, it very quickly came to it's accurate. Cuban ministry put out an official statement. And of course, the New York Times has all these obituaries teed up to written, and then they just wait and they add some final lines. They keep adding them. So I was reading Clyde Haberman's obituary in the New York Times. It's very interesting to see the Western press, the Guardian, the New York Times, other places. I guess Financial Times will ultimately have one. And while, you might expect them to lead with Joanne Chesimard to try to use her, slave name, as she would say, they didn't. For soft white nationalist mass commercial news entertainment media platforms, I was not surprised. It was interesting to see how they didn't really try to attack her as such. The closing quote in Clyde Haberman's obituary for Assata Shakur, which the title was Assata Shakur dies at 78, convicted revolutionary found refuge in Cuba. The final quote was from Assata Shakur. She said, "I feel like I've been a victim of America." Ms. Shakur told a Newsday reporter who interviewed her in Cuba in 1987. That's a little bit before you. Okay, so make sure when you. "If I owe allegiance to anything," she said, "it is my ancestors, especially the ones who came over on the slave ship. I feel I am answerable to them. I want to be able to say I tried, and that I tried to stand on this earth proud." That's profound in this way. When people say we built this country, yeah, under duress, my friend. Do you remember? You don't remember. No problem. That's why we're here. There's a certain pride of work and a pride of effort and a pride of community that must always be poured in our efforts as human beings, but never forget that you help construct a criminal enterprise under duress, one that keeps its foot on your natural neck. Think about the logic of those ancestors of ours in South Carolina in the Sea Islands in 1861 and 1862, those who were called contraband by the Union Army as they invaded and washed their way through South Carolina, those who, when told they had to leave the land, said, we're not leaving this land because this is where our ancestors are buried. But those who, while saying that, never forgot the fact that the language they spoke and the ways of knowing that they had created and the cultural meaning making that tied them to each other was in fact African, not American. And there's a difference between committing to stay physically in a place and understanding conceptually that your inheritance is the world. It's a different mindset, and it allows you to make different kind of choices, situational choices. Think of the pathology of connecting to the trauma site. Think of all the advice and counseling folk out there who tell people you got to restore your whole self, so you can't allow the trauma to be the thing that frames your identity. Think about how we talk about solutions, all the while reinforcing the hopeless circumstances that prevent the solutions. Let's think about that. I mean, we're seeing it now in a beautiful way. Oh, it's so beautiful. We're seeing the hypocrisy exposed. We're seeing not the fragility of democracy. What we're seeing is the reality of power. And how, if you want to have a different society, you're not going to be able to avoid the responsibility of pitching in to build it yourself. And I'm not talking about pumping life into the hopelessly ruined hot air balloons of the founding fathers of the United States of America. The people who you might get in the car and take your children to see at Mount Rushmore when where they violated indigenous land in the mountain, and then with partially Klan funded joy carved up the mountain, the way they took some of that money from the dollars of the Confederacy and the Klan and pumped money into what is now Stone Mountain down the street here in Georgia. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about even reviving the rhetoric that would say, well, I don't mean them. I mean it's something big. Well, then stop saying them if you don't mean them. If Assata Shakur can bar the damn security guards from coming in her cell as an act to let them know that I'm on constant 24-hour surveillance of you, even when I'm asleep, then certainly you can stop calling George Washington your father. I know you say that's not what you're doing, but isn't that what you're doing when you keep talking about solutions in the context of the hopeless circumstances that prevent the solutions? It's okay. I was there when we protested in Philadelphia, and my man who led the Avenging the Ancestors Coalition, who still leads it, attorney there in Philadelphia. And when you see Brother Mike lead that coalition and we're there protesting, you know, that's what led to the creation of the exhibit on a Judge and Hercules and all those Africans who escaped George Washington, who resisted. And now Bozo and his crew want to strip all that from Philadelphia. Guess what? Come on, baby, let's dance. Because you ain't got strong enough ankles to dance with us. And the more you drop the pretenses, the more we will be in the street to stop you, my friend, through protests, through letters, through voting, through all of the tools in the toolbox. And if you have a temporary victory, then attorney Michael Cord and the Avenging the Ancestors Coalition in Philadelphia will be back in the street. And guess what? We will be here Saturday after Saturday. And we're not alone. There are too many places to capture. You try to cancel Jimmy Kimmel? Okay, 6 million plus watched on ABC, even with your affiliates, almost a third of the local stations, including many liberal outlets that scared the hell out of the local people. Because guess how many local people found out this week who owns their local television station? It should scare you, and it does scare Sinclair. There's an article in today's New York Times about it, but that was 6+ million, maybe 7 million. Let's be generous, but 3 times that, 4 times that watched on YouTube alone. My friend, do you understand what's going on? So don't reinforce the hopeless circumstances that prevent solutions and say you're talking about trying to move towards solutions. Assata Shakur, Joanne Deborah Byron Chesimard became Assata Shakur forever. And as we see her in Cuba, as we see her embrace this Africanness of Cuba, She never forsakes anyone anywhere that she struggled with, and is always looking toward her daughter and the future and all of us at the same time. But understand, as she is doing that, she has done it in the fullness of her humanity, which has overflowed those circumstances that would prevent that, literally and figuratively. And she died of old age and health conditions, according to the to the Cuban Ministry of Foreign Affairs, beyond the grip of the settler colony, as her daughter Kikuya posted on Facebook. So should anyone have lost their lives? No. The New Jersey State Trooper who lost his life shouldn't have lost his life. Sundiata Kohli was convicted. Zaid Malik Shakur was killed right on the scene in 1973. But guess what? Guess what? Nobody should be killed. And the cops shouldn't be surveilling the New Jersey Turnpike. And maybe there shouldn't be no police. Maybe we should be able to conduct ourselves in a way where you don't need police. Maybe a whole lot of things. James Comey, who now has finally been indicted by a grand jury that don't tell you nothing, as you said yesterday, Prof. The old saying that, a prosecutor can get a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich. Well, yeah, it's not too short from true. Because, of course, remember that the prosecutor gets to determine what evidence the grand jury sees. I wonder how that grand jury felt or feels when it gets out of that indictment, comes to the world and says, you didn't tell us that, you didn't tell us that, you didn't tell us that. And you better believe that two-dimensional spokesmodel or whoever the hell that was that Trump slotted in there to get James Comey don't know enough law to be able to prosecute. It was her first case prosecuting, and the people in her office like, we ain't doing that. Pam Bondi and them are taking a jackhammer to the Department of Justice. Career prosecutors, line prosecutors, they're often called, are quitting and pushing back. But guess what? Once it's broken, we'll build something else. This is what was inevitable. You have to think about it that way, wielding of power. But, Assata Shakur, even in the terrible circumstances of the counterintelligence program and all that, they couldn't get a conviction against her. This is the one time, and it was on stuff that was no evidence. Read Evelyn Williams's book. But James Comey is very confident. Let's go to trial. I know I didn't do anything wrong. Yeah, you're a white man. And it's going to be okay. You came on the campus of Howard University. That wasn't 2019. It was 2017, 8 years ago. After Trump had fired him, he wants to hang out, burnish his bona fides. This is before he wrote his memoir. And he came to Howard University. I'll never forget. I got a call from the president's office, the then president, who's now back as the interim president, said, we want some faculty to come over and sit with James Comey, because he's going to occupy this distinguished chair and he's going to talk and have conversations with students and faculty and community. Okay. So I told him, yeah, I'll come over. I'll have a conversation with him. I assumed it was going to be with a few faculty, we'd be in a room, he'll go around, No, it was one-on-one. I got over to the president's office. I said, we want you to, yeah. Okay. Hey, man, what's going on? Greg Carr, African Studies, School of Law. Nice to meet you. That's it. So he's talking to me, and we're talking about what he wants to do, and he's asking me what I do. And I'm thinking to myself, you're the feds. You are the literal feds. And you was just in charge of all the feds, which means if I got a file, you know about it. I'm sure you did your homework before. Anyway, but it's all good. So at the very end, I said, listen, man, y'all still have the woman you call Joanne Chesimard on your most wanted list. Yeah. Then I said, there are young women on this campus named for Assata Shakur, who you don't call by that name, but I do. Because Assata Shakur is who she is to me. Joanne Chesimard is who she is to you. I ain't gonna walk him through the conceptual categories. Why? It doesn't matter. You social structure. I'm governance. This is what I said. There are young women on this campus named for Assata Shakur. So when you convene these conversations you're going to convene, please understand that you're coming into a place for which Assata Shakur is a hero to us. And so if you're truly about being open and listening, and he got a pad, he's writing out this stuff down. God only knows where it is. He's good for memorializing how good he did it with Donald Trump. But I guess all that will come out of the trial if they get to trial. I suspect the judge is going to dismiss these charges, but we'll see. My point being that we can never lose sight of the fact that we must talk and think and work about and towards solutions without reinforcing the hopeless circumstances that prevent them. And bowing to a structure that has never done anything except assault us is reinforcing a hopeless circumstance that prevents true solutions for everybody, including the James Comey if he wants to come along. So this acid assault, let's go through our conceptual categories for a couple of minutes and then we'll wrap it up for today. This is the final day of the Morehouse Human Rights Film Festival, the 7th one. Brilliant group of people have been together. for that. Really enjoying it. Um, the Association for the Study of Afro-American Life and History continues, wrapping up this weekend. Their convention is here in downtown Atlanta. Let me make sure. Can you still hear me, Prof? I feel like my earphones went out.
Yep.
I'm okay.
Yes. You're
Okay,
good.
good. Okay. All right, good. I just want to make sure. It kind of feel like it was a little tricky. All right. So, oh, while I'm thinking about it, let me put a footnote here. All these young people, all y'all listening right now, and I don't know what's going on in the ether, but it seems like there's more people have been coming in the community with us over the arc of our 7-day arc over the last couple of weeks. So let's just keep it up. Smash that like button if you're on the YouTube side. Tell folks to subscribe to Narrative and Newbie. I'll have a few words to say about that in a minute. Continue to grow and expand. It's really quite something, as you say, Prof, to see people in the streets. So this is for all the young people, and maybe even those who think they can't learn a language. I understand that the next iteration of these AirPods have a translation function, and even these here, which are second generation a few years ago, if you download the software, you can upgrade the ones you have so that instead of having to learn Spanish or French, you can just hit these two buttons on the bottom, and they'll do a real-time translation. Learn the language. Anyway, back to the point, because I thought maybe the battery had died on them. I was charged them. But this acid assault on the uh, United States structure and the global social structure is there. The beautiful thing about acid, when you throw it on something, either everything's going to melt or dissolve, or the thing that won't dissolve will be the thing that can't be dissolved. And what we're seeing now is that's what they call it, the acid test. We're seeing an acid test of these contemporary social structures. And so, you know, you saw Trump at the United Nations, that unhinged ramble. And the irony is it came immediately after Lula da Silva. Lula, of course, spoke first because Brazil has the pride of place. If you know about the United Nations, their annual September convening, and happy birthday, United Nations, 80 years you've been around. But we'll talk more about that maybe in passing in a moment, because one of the speakers at the UN today said that, in fact, it was Finland's president, Frederick Stubb. In fact, let me just quote Stubb here. I wrote it down. The composition of the United Nations still largely reflects the world of 1945. As the world has changed drastically, so should the decision-making at the United Nations. The number of permanent members should be increased at the Security Council. You heard the African nations say that over and over again. The Liberian leader got up and said, well, the Liberian representative got up and said, if Liberia gets a temporary seat on the UN, it's not Liberia's seat, it's Africa's seat. I was loving it. I mean, I know it's speeches, it isn't translated to reality, but speech is part of it. You heard Assata say it's not sufficient, but it is necessary. He goes on, President Stubb, the president of Finland, as I say, he says the number of permanent members should be increased at the Security Council. At least, he says, there should be 2 new seats for Asia, 2 for Africa, 1 for Latin America, and he says, this is permanent seats. He said, and no single state should have veto power. He goes on, he says, and if a member of the Security Council violates the UN Charter, speaking Friday morning, if a member, he says, if a member, he means a member state of the Security Council violates the UN Charter, its voting rights should be suspended. Not permanently. He proposes temporarily suspended for a term of years. I think it was 3 years, he said. But that's the United States. You back in Israel and all this slaughter, and everybody else voted, this is genocide. And you put finger, please. And I'm looking at these Negroes. There was a Black woman there with them. At least it ain't the sister Thompson Greenfield, who was there under the Biden administration, who's doing the dirty work. But as the president of Colombia was giving them hell, the 3 people representing the United States in the hall got up and walked out. That's cute. When Bibi started talking, everybody walked out. And the people who didn't walk out, I was looking at maybe South Korea, was a couple other, they clapping like hell at the people walking out. It's really quite striking. But this acid assault is revealing the reality. John Muhammad, as I said, Colombia's Piro, who gave the speech. Barbados, man, Mia Moore Motley be giving that workout at the UN. She was at the women's conference they had on Monday, the climate summit that preceded the UN meeting, the General Assembly convening, and then she gave her speech, as she always does. And when she said, they make it desert and call it peace. Go ahead, Prime Minister. It was really quite something. Here, of course, in the United States, the domestic United States, the authoritarian rhetoric continues. I don't know if you all saw, this is front page news. It's not on the front page of today's print version of the Times, but it is on the website and everywhere else. I read it in the Des Moines Register. last night, and then again on the New York Times website this morning. This public schools superintendent in Des Moines, a brother by the name of Ian Roberts, has been detained by ICE, saying that he's in the country illegally. It's really quite something. His people are from Guyana. He went to Coppin State. He ran in the Olympics for Guyana, but he's been here virtually his whole life. And I wasn't clear whether he was born here. If he's born here, it's birthright citizenship. But anyway, Tom Homan, who got bigger problems, including maybe where he misplaced $50,000 in a Cabo bag. But at any rate, I don't know whether he misplaced it or not. It's not clear. But what is clear, however, is that they've harassed this man. They got him detained right now. They say he had a gun and $3,000 in his car. Is that illegal? He had a permit for the gun, he says. And at any rate, the whole idea is to project this notion of strength and terrorize people, but that's because you're weak. They're trying to destroy norms and legal processes. This is the acid test. The Supreme Court in the last 24 hours. So if you're watching this later on in the week, the news should be even bigger. John Boy Roberts and his friends using that rocket docket, and Elena Kagan wrote the dissent on Friday in this instance, saying, y'all using this docket to policy make. They are allowing the executive branch, again, to withhold illegally congressionally encumbered money, this time for foreign aid. People who are suffering from HIV, people who are having real health challenges now will not be able to get this money because John Boy Roberts and them are like, okay, Trump can steal the money by saying we're not going to let you have it. What did Assata Shakur say? This money you stole from us, now you're stealing again because Congress muscled through aid that you're saying we don't want to spend it that way. That nasty piece of work, Russell Vogt, the quarterback of Project 2025, co-quarterback maybe with Kevin Roberts, who's at the Heritage Foundation. They said, we'll just ignore. We just won't spend the money. And John Boy Roberts is like, I maybe can't do it in the long term because at some point the lawsuit's going to get back to us on the merits of whether you can do that constitutionally. And if we still want to pretend there's a constitution, we're probably going to have to tell you can't do it. But by then the money will be gone because there'll be a new congressional session. The budget won't be there. That's what they're doing with this whole recession policy recession maneuver, where they say, well, we're not going to spend the money and Congress is going to have to meet to talk about it. And if we can just get past Congress being in session, it'll be like we don't spend the money and it doesn't matter why. So that's where they're at now, destroying these norms, destroying these legal processes, hunting political opponents. The current Democratic candidate for governor of New Jersey, even though we want to be Ras Baraka, the woman who won, now they doxing her. They released her military records, full military records. It's illegal. What you looking for? It ain't nothing there to find. Yeah, but you're gonna keep going with this propaganda. You want to prosecute Comey? Okay. You got George Soros in your gun sites. Okay. Adam Schiff, Tish James, Fani Willis, reading in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution this week. Now they looking at her travel documents. Where was she going? What was she doing? Did she meet with somebody while she was down there? Wait a minute. All of this and the firing of federal prosecutors. This is Russell Vogt threatening, saying, if we shut down the government, I get to fire everybody and I'm going to fire everybody. This is the acid test. And then a nasty little procedural move that they may try. If you read the Bulwark this week, the House Republicans trying to figure out how they can engage in election denial. So if you win an election, you saw that Congresswoman, soon to be Congresswoman Grijalva, if she is seated and the MAGA Muppet, Mike Johnson, is going to do everything he can to push swearing her in. This is the Congresswoman whose father, this is Adelita Grijalva, whose father, Raul Grijalva, died in office. Well, she won the election with close to 80% of the vote in Arizona, and she will be coming in as a congressperson. MAGA Muppet is trying to figure out how he can delay that, maybe to the 7th of October or beyond. He's been postponing meetings, postponing times, postponing convenings, because he's trying to make sure that what she said she's going to do once she is seated is delayed and maybe even denied, which is, she said, when I'm seated, I'm going to provide the 218th vote. For what? To release the Epstein files. We saw a few more released overnight by the Democrats. Some interesting names in there, including Elon Musk. But at any rate, the idea that they are pushing back against political opponents is out, and the dirty procedural moves they're trying to do, setting up a potential in 2026 to say, well, even if you win that seat, even if you win the presidency, the Electoral College, even if you win a Congress seat, we're going to challenge every state in every state. And if we control the secretaries of state, if we control the Republican Party, the legislative majorities and the governorship, then we may be able to prevent The certification. Remember, this is an issue that we saw back in the previous cycle, 2024, in 2020, in 2016. Except this time, the MAGA Muppet feels like they may be getting it close enough to steal. But guess what? It shouldn't raise your blood pressure. Assata Shakur was straight locked down, friends. When you read her memoir and see the terrible conditions, and when you hear her talking and in conversation with the people that she is incarcerated with, the women at the workhouse who they put in jail basically for playing a number or running a number while they are getting the graft off the top of the numbers being run. Women who got 6 months. Then she said they picked up, this is what she's writing about. She picked up this white girl on charges of possession of marijuana, something like 60 pounds or something like that. They said, yeah, they gave her ROR, release on her recognizance, and release on her own, under her own power, on her own authority, on her own recognizance. You let her go. She was a white woman. They put this sister right here in jail for 6 months for basically playing the numbers. And they probably put her in jail, arrested her while she was given the drop of the bag that you skimmed off the top of. So I'm saying all of that in real time, in real life. So many people in here right now, among the thousands of folk who are in Nubian Narrative, who are now here in YouTube and who will watch and who think about this and comment, please, as you're liking and sharing in the YouTube and subscribing, please subscribe, leave comments. Because I read through those comments, I know that you read through them, Karen. Of course, I know that the narrative team reads through. And people are relieving all kind of information. Continue, by the way, to put those historically Black high schools in to our database. My young people at Howard are working on that. In a minute, I'm going to talk about governance for a second, and you'll see how this is really beginning to take shape much beyond that, because Howard is just kind of a place where we're thinking together and doing some work, because, I'm teaching there, of course. But the big work is way beyond that, because we have jailbroken the Black University, and the community is really where the work is. But this pushback is also here. We're still in social structure. I'm going to wind this up. So even as this acid test is being rolled out, the pushback is there by people as audience. Of course, we saw what happened with Kimmel this week. We saw the Netanyahu walk out. The people, YouTube audience dwarfed the record number of broadcast viewers. And whatever happened, whether it's people canceling Hulu, canceling Disney Plus, and ain't going to no Marvel movies, people rearranging their travel plans. I read some of that this week as well. Disneyland, Disney World. I'm not coming. I'm not going. So Sinclair's like, we ain't airing. And Disney is like, yeah, you airing, because your ad revenue just got jacked up. You just missed a big payday, my friend. And look at those rates, they're going to jump. So you're going to have to pick your money or your whiteness. And guess what? Some of these companies, much to the chagrin of the hillbilly horde who think they will pick their whiteness over their money, you might be surprised. But guess what? That's what happened when the people push back. Ellison and the white nationalists trying to buy TikTok and capture social media and broadband, get Disney, get CBS, get these movie houses. Well, guess what? Sinclair and Nexstar folded. They ended the Jimmy Kimmel boycott on local ABC stations. That was in the paper too today. Local people begin to see the villains behind the local stations. Oh, I knew it was ABC affiliate, but wait, what is Nexstar? Oh, what's interesting? What is Sinclair? Oh, that's interesting. At the UN, nearly 160 countries recognizing a Palestinian state. It doesn't mean there's going to be a Palestinian state, but it does mean that increasingly Israel is isolated. So guess what? They quadruple down. We don't give a damn. And now y'all running around, not y'all, ain't nobody here doing it, I'm sure. But if you are, I'd like a word, maybe coming on Monday night. We talk about it during office hours. I want to understand why going to Kamala Harris's book tour for her book, 157 Days, and beating her up about Palestine in the same city where Trump is vomiting 5 minutes from where you going to attack Kamala Harris, and you ain't said a mumbling word. But I guess you know what y'all will do too. You will then leave that rally, leave that meeting with Kamala Harris, and stand out in the street and say, "It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win." You're absolutely right. I want you to say it in front of the United Nations too, because that's where the guy who got in is going. If you think Harris and Trump would have done the same thing, that's a conversation that we should have. But guess what? It is theoretical and speculative. Why? Because you didn't put your best opponent, to quote my friend Linda Sarsour, you didn't put your best opponent in the White House. You picked the guy who's going to throw the acid on the thing. And I'm like, hey, so I'm very clear about what comes next. I think some of y'all may be too. Maybe that's what you want. But guess what? We all going to find out now. By people as voters, there's a pushback. That Grijalva election in Arizona is just another reminder. 2/3 of the United States of America is not Trump voters. I'm talking about the people who are registered and eligible to vote. 62% of the people who are eligible and registered to vote voted last time in the presidential election. Trump won, in other words, about 32% of all the people who were eligible and able to vote in this country. If everybody had voted, Trump would not be president. If 80% of the people had voted, Trump would not be president. If 70% of the people who would vote, Trump would not be president. Gerrymandering works when you stay home. Those districts in Texas are not guaranteed to be flipped. Talking yesterday on Friday, Sirius, with Congressman Cleo Fields, who represents that second Black district in Louisiana that they're going after. He left the Congressional Black Caucus weekend, which is this week in Washington, D.C., and went back to Louisiana to continue to register voters and organize. Why? Because that's where it is. Gary Chambers, as he's told you many times, Prof, on the air, the South ain't red, the South is under-organized. Very important. Grivalda's win shows that their reign could be just about over. 218 to release the files. A couple more seats, and Johnson's not the speaker anymore. Is Hakeem Jeffries going to be better than the MAGA Muppet? You better believe it. Is he going to be a lot better? You better believe it. Is he going to be who we need him to be? Probably not. So get him out the paint. Overwhelm the federal legislature and pick somebody else to be the speaker. But right now, in the interim, the shift to local battles shows us that the work is to strengthen the provinces, to use a metaphor from the Hunger Games, because the revolution ain't gonna come from the capital city. The revolution gonna come from the provinces. We gotta understand. Revisit Richard Kreitner's Break It Up. Prof, you remember you talked to him. I went back and looked. October the 18th, 2022. Karen Hunter and Richard Kreitner, the author of the book Break It Up, Secession, Division, and the Secret History of America's Imperfect Union. Kreitner's thesis is that this country, the common theme in this country is not unity, but division. Secession is at the core of the American project. I'm leaving. No, you got to stay. No, you got to stay. Force. Understand that. It's very important. If you go back through our archive, if you go back through the in-class archives, session 125, where we were talking about Adam Clayton Powell, Black Power, Mary Alice, and the Platters, even My Prayer, but we talked about Richard Kreitner, session 129. We were talking about student loan forgiveness, and the power of Michael Jackson had some interesting combinations as we continued in that second and then the beginning of the third year. We talked about Richard Kreitner's book, Break It Up, session 198, under the headline title, Things Fall Apart, The Center Cannot Hold. All of that. And of course, if you want to go over on Roland Martin's Black Star Network channel, you can see the conversation I had with Kreitner in August 2022, August the 5th. Break It Up. When you read that book, what you see is that what we are experiencing now is consistent with the history of the country, not an anomaly. Stop listening to these people on broadcast media who got a different stake. Think about that. The social structure lesson we have finally is that we have seen the destruction of norms. We're seeing it. I say finally for this conception category. There will be no return to narrating these excesses as excesses. There will be no return to saying, well, this is just not who we are. Stop saying that, or say it. It's fine, because the line has been moved. Organizing and leveraging numbers in mass movement is the best weapon to renegotiate. We must love and protect each other. We knew renegotiation was coming. The challenge is not to confine the renegotiations to the four corners of this polity. That's why the United Nations is so important. That's why spend 30 minutes, get your young people and just sit and watch some speeches, scroll through the agenda, decide what country you want to hear from, click it and listen. That you ain't got the whole thing up. And hear how people around the world are talking about climate change, talking about human trafficking, talking about feeding people and clothing people. See how the president of Ghana talks about you. Muhammad had a whole section in his speech about reparations. Very important. Stop listening to blackface nativists who are getting paid to do what they do. Or it will be even worse, might actually believe that ish. Maybe reading a paragraph of a page of a book and think they done mastered. That ain't studying. That's beginning to study. The fear is that we will connect, not that we will stay apart. You said that yesterday, Prof. I was listening to your conversation you had with Roderick Morrow, and you were like, these walls they building to keep us in. Yeah. So imagine if they had kept Assata Shakur in the country. She made transition 90 miles off the coast of Florida and a universe away from the United States. Why? Because there was a country that she could go to. Imagine if we start having solidarity with all the countries of the world. Build a wall, my friend. I'm on WhatsApp. Build a wall, my friend. I'm back and forth. Try to take my passport. Oh, now, you a Mississippi farmer? I understand that you're eating soybeans now because nobody wants to buy them. Yeah, because my friends over here said they ain't buying no soybeans from you. Okay. Here's my passport. Very nice. Expedited even. Oh, so you do have good sense. Here's a bulletin pro tip, y'all. You take the L when you close yourself off from the world, not when you open yourself to the world. It's basic. Understand that as the cold Civil War ramps up. Let's go to the governance formation for a minute, because this is the heart of where I spent the last week. This governance assertion is very important. These connections is how we win. Shout out to my sister who's here in Nubia with us, my comrade, fellow teacher, Dr. Kelly Sparrow Mickens, who this week was honored by the elder women in Philadelphia with the honorific Mama Dr. Kelly Mickens Sparrow Mickens. We always called you Mama anyway, so it's just, but the sisters are the ones who have to bestow it. So it's very important. And thanks y'all on Monday night, by the way, which is where we got the news collectively in Nubia and office hours. Dr. Courtney Wilkerson, Dr. Mike Henderson, Sister Jacqueline Cole, the conversation that you all led in the second hour after we watched the good Sister Sherilyn Eiffel's speech at Howard University's opening convocation last week was just transformative. And especially, Courtney, you reminding us that there are many valences to helping young people achieve their full humanity by tapping into that full humanity, and that we have to face the realities of the world. Even as we're imagining perfection, we must deal with the world as it is, not as we want it to be. And in the life of Assata Shakur, we saw her move past the realities of what was at the moment to grasp the possible, with the help from her grandmother in terms of African ways of knowing. So yeah, spent this week in Atlanta. Monday, we had the dedication of Asa Hilliard's library, his personal library. It was a very important moment for us as African people. I think the Atlanta University Center is doing an incredible job. This is actually the program honoring the legacy of Dr. Asa G. Hilliard III. This is the Special Collection Library dedication. There he is with Mama Patsy Joe Hilliard there, of course, who's still with us. Her papers are at the Auburn Avenue Research Center. We were over there yesterday. This is the event program. So I want to thank everyone who was involved with that work. My brother, Kenyatta Bush, who was the master of ceremonies who convened the space, the good sisters who cataloged over 5,100 books that are now part of the permanent collection, the archive of the Atlanta University Woodruff Library, Sister Melissa Spate Vaughn, and Sister Stephanie Evans, a long-term friend and comrade. It's good to see her and Kathy. Kathy Adams came over. They came from Claflin, and to have them in conversation was good. They both went to graduate school at the University of Massachusetts, and they cataloged those books. And Stephanie was asking me, what are you going to do with your books? I said, oh, yeah, we're going to have a separate institution. Y'all listening now, because this is going to be a collective effort to put this together. We're working on it, of course, with the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations. I said, well, y'all did 5,100 of ACES books. I got probably 12, 13 times that. So we've got to figure out how we're going to move that. I think that the Atlanta University Center, the library there, which is the combined libraries of Morehouse, Spelman, the Atlanta University, Clark Atlanta University, and I said Morris Brown got to be brought back into this conversation, y'all. The Interdenominational Theological Center, it is a magnificent physical structure. I was telling the sister who runs the library now, Dr. Kimberly Bugg, that, who welcomed us in. If you ever get a chance to go to the AUC's Woodruff Library, it's just a beautiful space. It's physically beautiful. You get to feel culturally beautiful. You just feel the ethos of African people in terms of who we are to each other. And so Thomas Jackson, who is the African American Studies resource librarian in the library, got a chance to spend some time with him, of course, and always to see the good faculty at the AUC, Sam Livingston, Corey Claiborne, all the folks who got a chance to come. Brother Bobo Matosho was traveling. He was in New York, as he was told. He was, still out there with Isaac Song and the latest book and the new book that's getting ready to launch, all very important. So Dr. Beatty and I were there, Mario. We had a good conversation there. We were able to speak. The few remarks that I gave, and again, thanks to Patsy Joe Hilliard, Mama Patsy Joe, Baba Ace's partner, his wife for so many years, their children, Hakeem, Roby, the grands, the great grands. It was just beautiful. The staff, as I say, Dr. Bug, Sarah Tanner, who's over the archives. It was good to hear from you. And so the paper I read, it's brief remarks, about 10 minutes, was To Be an African Reader, Silence, Socialization, and Study. This is governance. This is who we are to each other. Asa Hilliard was so very important in that work. Good to see Mama Dr. Joyce King, my good sister, Dr. Afia Zakia. It was so many, sad seeing so many people, and Dr. King, of course, who was at Georgia State, occupying the Benjamin Mays chair, who is here with us week after week, who has talked about in class and talked about Nubia narrative, as has Baba, Dr. Akinyele Umoja, Dr. AK, who's over at Georgia State, one of the sets of shoulders upon which we all stand. There's a fundraiser coming up for the African Senate School, Kilombo, that his daughter, he and Mama Aminata and the family, the Umojas, have created a very important African Senate School here in the Atlanta area. But having them there really in a space named for Virginia Lacey Jones. Y'all should look that name up. She was called the Dean of Deans. She trained generations of librarians at the Atlanta University Center. It's very important. And, while I was there, I brought a copy of a little pamphlet. Here it is. This is a guide to the manuscript collection of the Negro collection at Trevor Arnett Library. Trevor Arnett was the library for the Atlanta University. Those books now are at Woodruff. And in terms of governance, who we are to each other is very interesting. Before the evening session on Wednesday, where I got a chance to be in community and conversation with Dr. Nina Gilbert, our friend, Professor Hunter, and it was just wonderful to see the young brothers who you were in conversation with in Jersey. They are still, in New York, they're still floating about that conversation they had with you. The young brother who's the quarterback for the Morehouse football team said, "Boy, I thought y'all was going to beat Howard." And I said, "But I understand you hung out with Karen Hunter on Friday before the game." Man, they were still sailing, these young cats. And so they were all there, of course, sending their love and respect and admiration to you as always. But we had a panel, Nina and they showed her film again, Belonging Beyond Brown, which is something that I hope one day we'll get to screen here, because all those young brothers have Nubia, narrative and Nubia subscriptions, and they actually integrate what we do here into the class they're teaching. We're doing two parallel classes. Nina's teaching the Black University Black Education class, and I'm teaching that Black University Black Education class, and we're sharing notes, and it's syncing up beautifully. We had that conversation too on Wednesday night, but with Nina, as I said, and also with Adria Welsher, who's over sociology at Morehouse. She moderated a panel after the film with Nina, myself, the good sister Bettina Love, Dr. Bettina Love, who's at Columbia, just a brilliant sister who said something I thought was very important. We were all brought together with the help of the Southern Poverty Law Center, a sister who I hadn't seen in years, Jalea Lyles. Jalea, I was so glad to see you. We just hugged and hugged. She is one of our Freedom School trainers from back in the day, Children's Defense Fund. Hadn't seen her in so long. Jalea trained generations of our elevator train. She was a trainer. She trained so many of our young people who went through freedom schools, including in Philadelphia. But Bettina said something at the end of a talk she gave earlier in the day. I was able to come in incognito, sneak in the back, and just kind of sit and listen, which is what I love to do, and take notes. And one thing she said at the end of her talk about Black power and education, about the question of how we should move through the world as a community, Dr. Love said, just imagine what we could have done if we had just been left alone. That is the animating question of my life, because I don't see it as speculation. I don't see it as Afrofuturism. I see it as the aspiration to unblock our memory, because what we could have done doesn't lie only in the future. It lies in restoring our memory, because what we have done, as you had on a shirt one time, Marcus Garvey, when you were pushing to get that petition signed to get him exonerated by the United States government, he never was not exonerated for us. But when you had one that says, get up and do, and then, Garvey also said, what people have done, people can do. And that's the transformative nature of study. It also shows perhaps its limitations in part. So on Monday, the talk I gave for about 10 minutes, and I'm going to begin to kind of get to the other conceptual categories before we finish up, but it was a governance talk. What I said was, I wanted to reflect a little bit on the life of Asa Grant Hilliard III. Nana Bafora Amankwati II, his Ghanaian name, his tree name, as he was installed as an African reader. Asa always referred to us as Africans. He was a reader. Thinking about Assata Shakur saying, what I did the first month I had me in lockdown, I was writing. She's reading and writing. And what we heard in her words is someone who has command of language. Yes, the words are in English, but the spirit, the animating force is something much more transformative. It comes from study. George Jackson, as we've talked about many times here, the whole question of study. Sunyata Akoli, study. Russell Maroon Schultz, study. Mumia Abu Jamal, whose health continues to present a challenge, who they haven't let out because they think somehow by trapping your body, they have trapped your mind, but they have not. Study becomes the centerpiece of struggle, and we must struggle to get through to the other side. So I talked about Asa Hilliard as a reader. And those three themes: silence, socialization, and study. First, I said silence. Silence settles. The book is silent. It's silent until you open it. It's furniture until you open it. It's a physical object. Dr. Clark used to always say, they say, y'all buy Dr. Ben's books and use them as furniture. Yikes. Until you open it. When you open the book, it's activated. But what happens when you put a bunch of books in the same place, like a library? Even as around this country, and they're throwing books away. We had that conversation about de-accessioning books, even in the AUC, the Arnett Library. I was talking about that. Where are all the books? When you put all the books together, when you walk through the Woodruff Library and the multiple levels, you'll see young people sitting at study tables and in study carrels all over the library. The students of the Atlanta University Center, the students of all those schools that are there. And even if you haven't opened the book, they're on the shelf and they're available and you're sitting among the books. When you do that simple act, you are surrounded by potentiality. This is the power of a physical library. Browsing, going online is very beautiful. That's what allowed me to read from Assata. I don't have a copy of Assata here, but I could have, picked up a copy or accessed a copy. But no, when you have the physical books all in one place, it engenders a sense of potentiality. It conveys a sense of seriousness and getting you ready. How many prison libraries? Think about Malcolm X, the twin autobiographies, Assata Shakur and Malcolm X, those two outsized autobiographies that deal with this question of capture and release and struggle. It was the prison library in Massachusetts that you see Malcolm X grapple with himself on. It's very important. And silence settles. The study of Asa Hilliard, and meaning the library of Asa Hilliard, the library where Melissa and Stephanie went to catalog those books. That was a sanctum. It was a place of potentiality. And Mama Passy Joe talking about they'd be at dinner, as somebody be over the house, people be over the house, and Ace would be like, just read something about that. Let me go down and get it. He'd go in his library, come up, give somebody the book, and Mama Passy Joe said, then he would stand there and wait for somebody to read what he's talking about. And she'd be like, Asa, they're not going to read it in real time. He'd just be standing there. I want you to read what I'm saying. I love it. It's a very important notion. Imagine to have all of that transported to a collective of sanctums, because that's what the AUC is building now. John Henrik Clark's books are there. Now Asa Hilliard's books are there. Who knows whose books are coming there next? I'm saying the AUC, maybe the Woodruff Library should be the compendium for the African-centered scholars. There's some other collections out there that may be coming there soon. And as you think about that, understand this is a place where the physical books are. Even inside the books, once you open them, the annotations, those annotations are glimpses. We've talked about that. Each book becomes a glimpse into how Asa's brain worked. When you write in your books, it becomes a glimpse into how your brain works. So that's when I said silence settles. The second of the three, socialization shapes. The book as socialization. This reminds us that when we come into a physical place, we are engaging in ritual. When we come into this virtual place, we're engaging in ritual. Week after week, some people use this as a ritual to hear someone who is in a space where you can become very contemplative, having all the distractions removed. A place like, for example, a hospice, as you say, Prab, that makes a moment like convening in a space where someone's voice is in your ear that much more essential. That enhances our responsibility to aspire to the highest standards of Medu, what the Egyptians would call Medu, or speech. Can we say we must be accurate, like the Doma that Hampate Ba writes about in his essay, The Living Tradition, in the UNESCO General History of Africa, the United Nations General History of Africa? The book as socialization reminds us when we come to a physical place, we are engaging in ritual. When we come to a virtual place, we are engaging in ritual. It reminds us that librarians and archivists are babysitters. I mean that in the sense that Baba Bunseke Fukiyao, Kia Kia Bunseki Fukiao, Dr. Fukiao means when he writes in his little book, Kendezi, The African Art of Babysitting, that you are responsible for bringing young people into intellectual, spiritual maturity. Baba Isa improved our capacity to do so by 5,000 books. That family, here are some more chances for you to babysit. Librarians, archivists, you could call yourselves that in a social structure formation, but in a governance formation, who are we to each other? You babysitters. Help young people. People work at bookstores. Help young people. Help old people. Help each other. Read this. Think about this. You came here looking for this, but I'm going to suggest this too. Help people. You're babysitting. So many libraries have been dispersed or discarded in favor of maker spaces and media centers. K-12, they call them media centers. At places where they throw all the books away, they call them maker spaces. What is a maker spaces? Do you know what a maker space is? The true meaning of a maker space is where you have the content to allow you to make a different world. That's what a maker space is in the sense of the Egyptian, the Permajat, the house of books, the Per-Ankh, the house of life. The act of reading and studying is so very important, and you have to have a place to do that. And then finally, study strengthens. From study strengthens. And this is where we're here today. You see Assata Shakur's memoir, her autobiography, it is strengthening us. It is strengthening us because those words have now infused generation after generation, 3 generations now, since that book was published in the late 80s. I say 3 generations, not in terms of decades, but in terms of distinct periodizations between generations. Generation Alpha, Generation X, Y, Z. Okay, that's beautiful. Take all that, throw it away, because we all babysitters. Or don't throw it away. Contain it in the social structure. Talk about it all you want. But in the governance formation, I'm not importing that language from William Neal. I'm not importing that language from Strauss and Neal, their book Generations, and then the books they wrote after that. They're the ones who coined those generations. Fine, that's beautiful. Take it. Maybe it's useful, maybe it's not. But in this governance formation, I've got older ideas about rites of passage. We got Marie McKelsey in our ear talking about these various ways that we think about this. We saw his daughter Rita talk about this when we were all at in Columbia, South Carolina, at Benedict College, walking us through the relationships of generation. We don't need O'Neill and Strauss's Generation Alpha, Generation XYZ, baby boomers. I mean, yeah, okay, go. Stand over there for a minute. We'll come over there in a minute. Maybe we'll have a conversation. But what we're not going to do is live over there. Stop repeating it. Just for a second, try this glass of water. And it might be that we may have to stand over you while you drink the glass of water. Like I said, here you're standing there waiting for somebody to read a passage in a book that we were talking about, but you don't know this. Read this and then we'll talk about it. I know you're capable, but I don't trust that you're going to do it if I look away. This is why week after week, I'm so glad you didn't say, Prof, I'm just going to go to the island. I'm going to chill. Why? Because there's people who need the water and there are people who have the water. So we're connecting those two groups and we're also enhancing the conversation by contributing a little cool, fresh water ourselves. So that question then of study strengthens. Asa published a lot of bibliographies. Here are a couple. His little book, I don't even know if you can get this one anymore, called 50 Plus. It's a little book. It's been the thing that I always say, I wrote a couple essays over the years. People say, what should I read? So I wrote up a couple of things. I did one for the Children's Defense Fund, Julia, back in the day. Asa Hilliard, Essential References on the History of African People. Here are 50 plus books. But what he does is he annotates it. It's annotated bibliography. He's telling you the book, but he's also telling you why you should read the book. It's a very important notion. You'll see here, for example, let me just pick an example and then we'll move on. This is, here we go. Kenneth King's book, Pan-Africanism and Education, a study of race, philanthropy, and education in the southern states of America and East Africa. Funny how the ancestors work, because Asa was on these think tanks years ago. Some of y'all who know Asa know he was talking about the Heritage Foundation 30 years ago. He was talking about the Rand Corporation, all that stuff. Asa would give presentations on that stuff, said, this is what they're hatching, this is what they're planning. As I said last Monday, I said, if Asa Hilliard were physically with us, it would be no in class with Carr, be in class with Asa. And I can only imagine what he would have done with this platform, because he was also ahead of the time in terms of electronic stuff. He's always emailing stuff, sharing stuff, had thumb drives with all kind of stuff on it. Well, guess what? He is now an ancestor. And when you hear me talk, you're hearing him talk. When you hear us talk, you're hearing them talk. This is the way we continue it. So this is what he said under this reference he just gave. It says, King presents in detail the history of the educational mechanisms used to control African people in the United States and on the continent of Africa by a small group of influential Europeans. They were educational philanthropists who helped shape the direction of education for people of African descent. Simple, couple of lines with a book title, 50 plus, spend $5, get it. And you see how this question then of study strengthening is put. Finally, on this third piece, he, in this little book called African Power, which y'all seen many times we talk about affirming African indigenous socialization in the face of the culture wars, he has a little section in here. This is not a very long book at all. It's about 80 pages. He's got a section in here called, let me see, I want to say, oh, here, the homework must intensify and continue. He talks about homework a lot. He talks about homework in this book, Seba, The Awakening of the African Mind, where he has another book list. He talks about it in a book called The Maroon Within Us. Asa Hilliard. But here it is, page 53. This is what Asa Hilliard says here. He says, there is no way around serious and disciplined study. We must study and study more. Study will reintroduce us to our tradition as African people, a beneficial tradition. Nothing in the general culture requires us to do this, and so we must set our own standards. We must do this work for ourselves in our own initiative. There is no chance whatsoever that we can launch an appropriate socialization effort without study, without structure, without habit tied to our own heritage. I love this line. I'll end with this in this quote in this book. He says, nothing is more pitiful than to be led around by those who have not done their homework. Okay, I can't resist. Let me go just for a couple more sentences. He says, around the world, some African and non-African Africans lead panel discussions, public meetings, and more, and they are held to address the African agenda. While some are often well-intentioned, the meetings feature disorganized sound bites, confusion, and a lack of synthesis and mission. Further, some of the valuable information revealed in these forums are sometimes repeating what Africans have said 20, 30, 50, 100, and 200 years ago. But because there was no study, Africans behave as though they are presenting new information. Had they studied and not been taught to avoid or resist their own history, they would not be reinventing the wheel. When you have not studied, you represent the accurate image of a disorganized, unfocused, and controlled group. Unfortunately, too many individuals stand ready to enter the limelight with no clear vision. All the hit dogs, 1, 2, 3, holler. Jesus. Anyway, so all these things came together in the life of Asa Hilliard. And it was good to share in those moments with him. I told him, I knew I was becoming an African reader when Asa Hilliard, every time I would see him, he'd come out his bag with a book, say, have you seen this? Most of the times I hadn't seen it. A lot of times he would just give me the book and buy another one. I knew I was getting my weight up one day after years when I saw him at a meeting. We were in Philadelphia. He came out of his bag with a book on Timbuktu and the Songhai Empire, and I came out of my bag with the same book. And he smiled. Has he seen this? I said, yeah, here. And he said, okay. See, that's how you do it. That's rites of passage right there. That's how you know. When y'all see me, Dr. Carr, no, I was trained by the best. Asa Hilliard, Larry Obadeli Williams, Kwaku Larry Crow, all these people. That's Anderson Thompson. That's who did it for me. So that was very important. On the way then, on Wednesday, we had the panel I was talking about at the Human Rights Film Festival. And very important because what we were asked by Dr. Welsher, who was moderating the panel, what's the transformative nature of study? What are the limitations of study? This is why Assata and what she said was so powerful. Memory recovery. We should stop talking about memory recovery if we're not going to engage in it. Like it's nothing more pathetic, people being led by people who haven't done their homework. We got to study our history. Okay, so let's study it. Okay. So then when slavery, no, not yet, not you yet. Let's get somebody in here who's done a little bit more study because I understand the limelight is seductive and people want to hear people talking and they want to be the person talk. No problem. Here it is. But if all we have, to quote Nas, is one mic, whoever's on it needs to have a different standard and should be vetted by those who have showed themselves approved to do it. It means the world for me to be able to walk into a room where Joyce King is sitting with Afia Sakia and be embraced by both of them. Because I know who Joyce King is, a true beast. I mean, when I say beast, I mean in the highest form. To see her and Ken Nunn talking about the time they spent with St. Clair Drake, or to be able to check up on somebody like Sylvia Winter by asking Joyce King, who was one of her junior proteges and students as they fought the curriculum wars in California, to be part of that community. Oh no, that you can aspire to it. You should aspire to it, but aspiring to it don't get it done. You got to show that you belong, and you got to be vetted. And that vetting should be completely severe, even as it is done in love. You think of Assata Shakur, you know what she don't write about in that memoir? It's the specifics of how they broke out. Why? Because we might do that again. You think I'm gonna write it in a book? Let's be clear. Who I trust got to be based on what you have done and how you presented yourself. It's very important to walk the campus of Morehouse College with my friend Elia Davis, who was over the first year experience courses at Morehouse. And it was on Wednesday. So in the afternoon, I went to see the ancestors who are buried, the remains. Benjamin and Sadie Mays and John Hope is there, and Hugh Gloucester. A lot of these HBCUs will put some of the ancestors there, their remains. And so I'm standing in front of Benjamin Mays, and I heard somebody say, "Yeah, take a picture." I looked up, my man Elia Davis, professor of philosophy, counselor, very important figure at Morehouse over the first year experience classes. And as me and Elia standing there talking, I'm saying all these young people, women and men, going into this little valley with all these African and Caribbean flags. Some of them had the little flags you can wave like this. Other ones had them tied around their neck like a cape. And as they're doing this, I'm saying, where they going, Ilya? He said, they call it hump day here at Morehouse. What does that mean? I mean, on Wednesday, they all get together. And sure enough, they got a stage, they got performers, they got food vendors, they got vendors selling jewelry and clothes. Like, it's like a mini party. Yeah, very nice. It's an afternoon thing. Talking to one of the Spelman students, Ashe Kelsey, who's at Spelman. She said they have one called Hump After Dark. What does that mean? Well, maybe instead of going 4 to 6, they go 6 to 8 or 8 to 10. Okay, this is getting interesting. But they're at the Atlanta University Center. And as I told my Howard students, I was back in class Thursday morning, I'm saying, yeah, I told them about this hump day. And the young people there who are from the South, so they do that at HBCUs all over the South. I said, I love this. Let off a little steam. It's wholesome. It's a very beautiful ritual. That's who we are to each other. And that's what you have to do. So finally, I went by the place where the library used to be, the Trevor Arnett Library, which Ilya told me was designed to mirror the library at Harvard. I forget the name of the library at Harvard. It'll come to me in a minute. If I get quiet, it'll come. Widener Library at Harvard. And it's a beautiful building. And upstairs, they have the Hale Woodruff murals, not the Amistad murals. Those are at Talladega. Sam and I were talking about that. I need to go down and see those. But the 8-panel murals that he did depicting the history of African art, beginning in Africa and then connecting to the world. You could do a whole curriculum, and whole curriculum had been done around the Hale Woodruff murals, which have been restored beautifully on the second floor of the Trevor Arnett Library. And as I'm coming out, I run into a sister who's part of this community. So Professor Dunkley, if you're here this morning, Tina Maria Dunkley, if you all know Professor Dunkley, you should know her. If you don't know her, she's an artist, a scholar, she's a curator. She built that collection, the Atlanta University Art Collection. Now the Clark Atlanta University Art Collection is one of the great collections in the world of African art. And by that, I mean African global art. She was the person who preserved the art when it was the Atlanta University and curated the art collection, sitting at the center of a community of people. One of the people who helped her was an old head, someone she took a master's in African American Studies from at Clark Atlanta, the great Richard A. Long. And she wrote her thesis on something that took place with Hale Woodruff's help from 1942 to 1970. Over 900 artists of African descent displayed their work there at the Atlanta University in something called the Atlanta University Art Annuals. And she wrote about that. And she's continuing. In fact, if you get a chance, get the catalog she helped put together that she assembled called In the Eye of Muses. Selections from the Clark Atlanta University Art Collection. That's a very important collection. So to see Professor Dunkley, I was coming out of the building, getting ready to head over to Morehouse. Randall Lawrence Carter, the dean of the chapel, which was a blessing to spend a few minutes with him. And she recognized me. Oh, she said, yeah, y'all be on Saturdays. I'm like, yeah. So I'll tell Professor Honey, you said hello. So I'm doing it, Tina. I told you, we saw her yesterday at the at Auburn Avenue Research Center too. They had an interesting panel we kind of stumbled on. And Reba got a library card, which is great. I mean, a renewed library card. They got special ones. If you're in Atlanta, you get an Atlanta library card, go over to the Auburn Avenue Research Center and get you one of these African art library cards. They're free. And you already got library cards to switch it for that. Kind of weigh this up. The third of the six conceptual categories, ways of knowing. I've kind of talked about that already with Asa Hilliard's remarks he made at the Hilliard ritual. Community does exist. That Morehouse Hump ritual reminded me of that. We're all the same. They do it in partnership, the Morehouse does, with the African students and the Caribbean students. That's why they were wearing those flags. But it's everybody. And I said, where are these girls coming from? They come from Clark, come from Spelman, Morris Brown. Everybody gets to come. Morehouse throws it, but everybody comes. That is community. I've been convinced again and again and again about the power of studying engagement as a collective practice. Asa was huge on being aware of that, huge on community. Very important to understand that. We study together, it strengthens us. Shout out to the good brother Curtis Bunn, who Lamont and I interviewed, where he talks about this National Book Club conference he has in Atlanta. Sister Shauna Renee, beginning this week on Sirius, talking about National Literacy Month and asking Daryl and Cassie and everybody in the community, what y'all read? And then talking about reading. That's why we do it in office hours. The fourth conceptual category, science and technology. That's what we're doing now. Platform as community. Convening. How do we neutralize book banning? Y'all probably saw the Secretary of Education in Oklahoma this week, Ryan Walters, quit. Maybe there's some more revelations about what's on his browser. I don't know. I'm not sure whether it is or isn't. He said last week that he wants every public high school in Oklahoma to have a chapter of Turning Point USA. People hadn't finished screaming about it before he said, well, I'm going to resign. I'm going to be the CEO at the Teacher Freedom Alliance. Well, what is the Teacher Freedom Alliance? Private group. I looked it up. The anti-teacher union, they who you think. They're mobs for liberty again. All this. Hey, guess what? Knock yourself out, baby. Because you can't stop Narrative in Nubia. You can't stop In Class. You can't stop all these convenience. You can't stop Sirius. You can't stop the Black Star Network. You can't stop 1,000 million flowers blooming. Now, our challenge is to narrow and focus so that we know that everybody who talking ain't talking at the same level. Just like everybody who said they're revolutionary ain't bust out of prison and spend the rest of their life outside the United States of America spreading the good word and infecting generation after generation after generation with the good word. So that word means something. It should mean something. Everybody has a microphone now. How do we find the spaces that strike the resonant chords? People are offering better classes on digital platforms than anything being offered in any university in the world. Trust me on that. I haven't been to every university in the world, so I guess don't trust me on that. But I will say this: if you can find what you are looking for and begin to recognize how better to look for the thing you thought you were looking for, you will find that the tuition moves from $60,000 a year, $100,000 a year, $10,000 a year to zero, or a simple subscription fee once a year, or once a month, or once a week. What can people afford? My point is this: it flattens the concept of the university. How do we wed our terrestrial institutions to the digital platforms? The Morehouse class is using in-class with Carr. That blew my mind. And I know what Nina is doing. We're doing it together. We're doing it in tandem. And then Karen, that she's connected to you. I was saying this summer, this is what I told them right there Wednesday. And I'm going to say it here publicly. I said, the HBCUs, I love coming to the Atlanta University Center. I said, maybe we need to get together for a week or two. No structured courses, maybe lightly organized around conversations, but we'll call it HBCU Summer School. Because we've already jailbroken. We've jailbroken the Black University. How do we connect the physical places to what we're doing, which is the digital space, which is the science and technology use now that everybody's got a nationalism? The Blitz is back on. The Blitz is back on, and the determination is to pull us off our square. But we passed that now. The fifth of the six conceptual categories, cultural meaning making. Jimmy Kimmel's monologue was an attempt at cultural meaning making out of a social structure, and he leveraged his status in business and popular culture to do what he needed to do. Think of Nubia, think of what we're doing as detox clinic. It's not easy. Reading Assata when she describes that Middlesex County workhouse trying to make community with those women when they didn't want her to do that shows you that it can be done. We can speak to many audiences and we connect them. Understand that. Finally, movement and memory. That belonging beyond Brown moment when Professor Nina Gilbert shows the TEP Center in Louisiana. 3 Black women who, as little girls, Leona Tate, Gail Etienne, and Tessie Provost, November the 19th, 1960, they had them desegregate McDonough 19. McDonough 19 was the name of the school. Then it became Louis Armstrong. Then Katrina hit, the building got hollowed out, and Dr. Tate, Leona Tate, who was one of those 3 little girls in November 1960, said, this building can't be torn down. So she goes into action, gets the New Orleans City Council and the government involved, gets the state of Louisiana involved, gets private funders involved, and now they own the building, and it's a museum, and it's going to have senior housing on the top floors. She has decided, she said, this story got to be told. That's movement and memory. Anybody who opposes the white nationalists, they're going to call you a Democrat. They're going to call you less than a child of God. And we don't care. Do not fall into the trap. Find out what unites us. We are not fascists. We are decent people. Live and let live. The concept of the nation state has never been strong. What if the real nationalism is live and let live? What if the intermediate suffering is redistributed in a pain that we can all endure short term? White farmers who are racist, you got to eat them soybeans. You can't sell them. Oh, you're not so racist as you thought. Okay, come on then. Let's act right. But I'm not going to spend the rest of my life trying to please you. I'm going to build and self-determine. And I think that'll have a lot more influence on what you do next than me trying to convince you of my humanity, which is reinforcing the trap. Those early in classes were a series of deep COVID learning podcasts, book after book, source after source. You got to go through the archive. It's all in one place now. You can go through it. Now the blitz is back on. They're trying to pull us off our square. The determination to unblock our passageways of memory must now be focused differently. We'll pause because we're in a moment when we can ask ourselves that it is our duty to win. And in that duty to win, what we have to now understand is that we have the blueprint. The blueprint doesn't exist in the future. It doesn't exist exclusively in the present, as Asa said. Some of this stuff we've been talking about for centuries. It exists in listening to the voice of our ancestors. So as we wish and pray for and send all best energies to the soul, the spirit of Sister Assata Shakur, we can kind of allow her to remind us of who we are to each other through a ways of knowing that we began with through her grandmother, and then we will finish with her sitting in Cuba, where referees and presidents and feds are not allowed. And we'll let her move us in the momentum of memory to remind us that we're all possible. We're all capable of what she did, this little lady from Jersey and North Carolina. There she is. Oh yeah, this is it. Yes, yes.
One of the most shocking things when I came to Cuba was just how African Cuba is. I mean, I didn't realize that there were this whole huge number of African people on this island. I had no idea, because the projection is very different, how you are taught to think about Cuba in the U.S. media. So I was really shocked. And then I began to be exposed to the culture, and the culture is so rich, whether it's in dance, whether it's music. It's so African. There's the rhythm, there's the drums, I began to be aware of just how much they had robbed us in the United States, because the slavery, the kind of slavery that existed here was terrible, and equally as terrible in the United States, but people were able to keep their religions, their gods, their taught people language. They were able to maintain dances, rituals that were directly from Africa. And for the first time in my life, I became acquainted with the Orishas, with Yemaya, Shango, Obatala, and I felt like, wow, I was reclaiming just another piece that was stolen from us.
That's it. Reclaim your pieces. It is GD.